Think about it. Think about it. Think about it.
And welcome back to High School Basketball Weekly. Tim Murray along with Rick Bowen. Rick, tournament action in full gear, both the Western Mass Tournament and the state tournament. And we're going to report results in both the boys and girls on both sides. And we're going to get right to it as we start off with the girls action, Rick. And before we get to the tournament action and local action, let's talk about a couple teams that didn't qualify for the tournament but had some great seasons, and but for some close losses, they might have been in the tournament. And specifically, I'd like to talk about the McCann Tech Hornets, Rick.
Yeah, Kathy Budai's young Hornets, they played some pretty good basketball this year, but they didn't have the wins to get into the tournament. And I mentioned to you last week that I think at this show, I'm actually going to bring up the point after I do a little bit of research to see how many games the McCann girls lost by single digits. I'm not talking about 10. They lost by 10. They lost by 12 to some teams. But I'm talking single digits, under 10 points. And the answer was 9 games in single digits. Simple to do the math. They ended up at 6-14 overall. You win half of those games that you lost by single digits. Not all of them, just half. And they had a really, really good shot to make 500 at 10-10. And they would have gotten in the tournament. So most of those games went down to the wire. A lot of those games were second half running out of gas a little bit. But, kudos to Kathy Budai and her Lady Hornets. Even though they didn't reach some of their goals, most likely, with that record and didn't get into the tournament, they fought hard all year long. And they got some excellent play by their senior, Macy Tatro. She really took the team on her back this year, as she did last year when Azalea Cass was out for half the season. So, you're always going to lose your seniors, but congratulations for these girls that went to practice and worked hard every day, got on the bus and traveled over the mountain every other day, and gave it their all. And even though they didn't make the tournament, we here at High School Basketball Weekly want to commend their efforts. And I still think Kathy's got a pretty good program down there. And there's a couple first years coming in next year that's very promising. So we'll see what happens then.
And a team I echo the same thoughts as you on, Rick, the Mount Greylock Mounties. They finished overall with a record of 7-13, 4-8. In the state rankings, they finished at number 33 in D5. So they were just outside that top 32, even though they finished with a sub-500 record.
Yeah, Coach Jacoby's Lady Mounties were ranked in the upper 30s for a while, and we said, geez, I don't think they're going to make it. And they finished the season strong, Tim. They actually won their last 3 games, and one of them we didn't report on last week went over Pioneer Valley Christian 64-33, and their top 2 scorers came through as they always do. Charlotte Cootie, the incredibly talented sophomore, had 23 points, and senior Molly Sullivan had 9. And they creeped up every game they won of the last 3. And boy, I mean, that really hurts. With the first 32 getting in, and then every team over 32 with a better than 500 record getting in. I think, and I know, Tim, that there are teams in the girls Division 5 that do not have a program or a team as good as the Lady Mounties, and they didn't get in because of that technicality.
And I'm going to offer an opinion here, Rick, if I might. You look at the schedule that Mount Greylock played, and I know I'm a bit biased towards Berkshire County basketball, both boys and girls, but you remember they played Springfield ICS twice, who Drury played, and Springfield ICS ended up winning the Class C Girls Western Mass Championship. We'll talk about that in a moment. And they also finished number 2 in the state rankings, and that's who Greylock played twice. Greylock played Hoosick once, who ended up 4 in the Division 5 state rankings and won the Class D Western Mass Championship. And they played a very good Drury team, who I think is better than what their ranking ultimately ended up at. And so you look at the strength of their schedule, I just believe they got it treated a little bit unfairly in the rankings, and really I thought should have qualified for the field. They would have been competitive. So
yeah, they've also got Agawam in there too.
Absolutely.
In that league, and it's a tough one. It's bunched up like it normally is. That league finished pretty much this season as it did last season with ICS on top. But Greylock fought and fought and fought, and they ended up with a final overall record of 7-13. And they lost a lot of close games too. I didn't do the research on the Mounties as I did on the Hornets, but I can tell you that heartbreaking loss up at Drury was their third consecutive 3-point loss in a matter of a week and a half.
Right. And of course, they have a very fine nucleus of players coming back for next year, and Coach Jacoby has a lot to look forward to next year for the Mounties. Two local teams still in action, Rick. The Drury Blue Devils, and you heard me predict here.
You did. Yeah.
last week that I thought Drury, with the way they were playing, they went through a rough stretch, but they got the ship righted, so to speak, and I thought they had a very good chance to get to the finals of Class C in Western Massachusetts, and they didn't disappoint.
They did, and you can't call them Jekyll and Hyde. They go out and they play hard every game, and they've had some heartbreaking losses this year. Including a couple games they didn't compete real well with Springfield ICS, but over the last 2 years they certainly did give them some stiff competition. And they had to play an incredibly talented number 2 seed, Palmer, on the road, Tim. And the defense, as Coach Downey stresses in his program. And they held Palmer to 23 points. They came away with a 34-23 victory on the road. Jacinta Felix had 11 points and Alyssa Russell had 10. And that propelled the Drury Blue Devils into that Class C final against ICS. And you did predict it. I got a chance to see. I actually contacted Coach Downey and congratulated him on reaching the finals. And I told him about your prediction on this program. And he said, yeah, I saw Mr. Morey down at the youth tournament down at the North Adams Armory. And he said, not going to make a liar out of you, or you had said something, don't make a liar out of me.
Right.
But his kids did battle.
Yep, very good squad, and really a fine end to them. No shame in losing to a very difficult and very talented Springfield ICS team in the Class C finals. And of course, they got off to a good start in the state tournament, right?
Yeah, they did. In that Class C finals, they competed for the first halftime. I think they were down by 8 at halftime. Jacinta Felix again led the way with 14, and Morgan Sarkis had 9 for the Lady Devils. And you've covered this team. I haven't covered the team as you have, but you saw them this year. The incredible Alicia Mitchell, who's already scored 1,000 points as a junior, and Alexa May Davis. They are the 1-2 punch of Division 5 girls basketball,
right,
at least in Western Mass. They just dominated. They scored close to 40 points between the two of them. But Drury did come back in the first round of the D5 girls tournament, and they knocked off Invocation Academy 50-21 up at the Bucky Willett Gym. Alyssa Russell had 19, and Morgan Sarkis again, second leading scorer, not double figures, but with 9, and they they balanced scoring. So Drury's going to be taking on Tohoto of Boylston tonight, and hopefully they can pull one out. I like chances of the Berkshire County teams, Tim, when they go on the road and they haven't seen the team and that team hasn't seen them. That Berkshire County basketball we talk about all the time.
Absolutely. And Hoosick Valley, Rick, they accomplished something that they've gotten kind of used to over the years. They won their second consecutive Class D Western Mass Championship, and they won, overall their fourth so-called Western Mass Championship in a row, and they just powered through that Class D division, but not without a little bit of a tussle there in the championship game against Lennox.
Well, let's take a look at their overall record, Tim. The Lady Canes stand at 17-4, and if you remember, they were 1-3. I think they might have been 1-3 or maybe 2-3 at the best going into the Drury game that we covered up in Cheshire earlier this year. Right. And they have been on an incredible run. And I think the thing that impresses me the most is that you don't have your superstars, you don't have your Mercers and your Mendels or your Fallon Fields, your Mackenzie Robinsons and so on. There's so many girls I could name over the last 10 or 12 years in that program. But they've got girls that step up, and you don't know one way or another who's going to be your leading scorer. It may be Abby Scalaba, it could be Taylor Garabedian, it could be Ashlyn LaShore, it could be Hannah Shea, who had incredible finals that you called on Saturday. But they're an impressive team. You got to give Coach Frederick credit for coming in and having the girls buy into his program and his plan now. But they put the work in, and that's where it shows. And even though we can't compare them to other teams because that would be unfair, they're still the cream of the crop around here and in Division 5 in the state of Massachusetts. And that was a great battle against a very good Lennox team. And 71-56 Lennox, and you'll see here.
Yeah, Hannah Shea, Rick, she was really the star of this one. She came out hitting on all cylinders right out of the gate in that first quarter. But then there's, you see her, and then you see what she did here, both from the perimeter and driving to the basket. And of course, Gabby Billets has really asserted herself down the stretch. And then there's Taylor Garabedian, just when you think, you've got it all boxed up. They have so many different weapons. Again, you see Billets there, real presence underneath. And then you've got Marin Capiello. She hit a 3-ball. Billets again with a putback. She was huge on the boards. She had a double-double. And then right out of the box, you got Shea back and McNeese off the bench. Just a very, 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 very difficult team to defend because you've got any number of young ladies who will throw the ball in beyond the three-point line. And for her outstanding effort in that ball game in the Western Mass Class D Championship, Hannah Shea, the junior, with 22 big points for the Hurricanes. She was the real offensive force. And our co-player of the week, Gabby Billets, the senior, Rick, 12 points in Pioneer, 15 in the final against Lennox, and she had a double-double. Her rebounds were well into the double figures for the Hurricanes. So the seniors had quite a career for Hoosick Valley, and this is a well-deserved honor for both Gabby Billets and Hannah Shea.
They're very, very deserving for both young ladies. I'm really happy for Hannah Shea because I looked at her as a role player, but she's coming into her own now, as are several other girls that are sophomores and juniors. So it's great for the program. And as I said a few minutes ago, you just don't know who's going to lead that team. Any given night, it could be anyone, but they get contributions. And the thing is, they have so many girls that can knock down those threes, and they all have beautiful rotated shots.
Yep.
They're beautiful. They practice that all the time. If they're open, they take the shot, and that Hoosick basketball has been that way for many, many years under no matter who's coaching that program. They try to penetrate, they try the weave, they try to get into the paint, but if they can't, they like to dish out. And they've got several girls that can knock down those threes, and that's what makes them so good. Is you can't focus on a couple of girls and say we're going to slow them down tonight because two more are going to pop right in and take over.
Right. I don't know if we still have the MIAA Division 5 girls ranking for the state tournament, which is now underway. There it is. Interesting, Rick, when you look at the girls for Division 5 and you study it, there is not a team really in that first bracket there. I think you'd see some teams there, and I'll go out on a limb again. Drury at number 23, they have a game coming up tonight against Tohoto, but Boylston on the road. That's going to be a tough matchup at number 10. But I like Drury in that game. I looked at the Tohoto schedule, their quality of play. Don't sell Drury short on this one. I think they keep the dream going.
Well, it ranked at number 23, and they were in the 30s for a while, and they knew they were going to have a hard climb just to get to 32, and they finished the season strong. And you don't count them out after what you said. I thought it was going to be a real battle against Palmer, and it was. But the defense is what got them through and got them into the championship game in Western Mass.
So we're going to be watching that one closely, see how Drury does in their next game against Tohoto, the number 2 seed. And that's the finals of the Class C Western Mass tournament. And there it is. You see a very talented Springfield ICS team winning. But Drury had a nice tournament, a nice run, Rick.
Yeah, they got to where I think Coach Downey was happy. If you get into the class that you're playing in, A, B, C, or D, it would be for our locals, C and D, and you made it to the finals. Yeah, you've been pretty successful, and then that will propel you into the state tournament from there.
And then you see the Class D Western Mass tournament and the run that Lennox had. Now, interestingly, in the state tournament for the Class for Division 5, a potential rematch is being set up next week for Lennox and Hoosick Valley. If that occurs, that will be at Hoosick Valley. If Lennox and Hoosick Valley win their next games in the tournament, they will meet in the state tournament at Hoosick Valley. That's a good one. This was a very solid Lennox team. They were tenacious. They never quit. Hoosick Valley had their hands full despite what the score said, so we'll be watching that closely.
Coach Nicole Patella down at Lennox, of course, her dad, Fred Lefebvre, the incredible legend down there. She's grew up with basketball. Her kids, it's all basketball in that family. She's incredibly talented, and she's a good teacher and a good coach, and she gets the best out of her kids. For a very small school, that boys and girls program is pretty darn good down there. And if they play again, boy, you never know.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be a good one, I think.
Looking forward to it, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the boys' action now, Rick. And again, talking about two teams here that have qualified for action in tournament play. The McCann-Tech Hornets have a big game coming up against Mystic Valley Charter in the D5 tournament. But McCann, they got in there. Overall record 11-9. They were seeded number 40. And we're going to see how they do in the state tournament.
Yeah, this is where if you have your own personal view on the way the MIA runs their tournament, you can't have it both ways. So if you're setting your ways that it should be the top 32 teams or 16 teams or whatever number you've come up with, if you think that things need to be fixed a little bit in the tournament, then McCann wouldn't be on that side. They'd be on the other side of the fence looking in. McCann got in, ladies and gentlemen, because they had a better than 500 record. They finished their 20-game schedule at 11-9, and even though they were 40 ranked in Division 5 in the MIA boys, they still get in. So, good for them. The Mystic Valley Charter. You never know. They're from Malden. I'm sure it's difficult to see each other. It's not like the upper collegiate level where you share film of the games, and so it's hard to prepare one way or another for these teams. So let's give McCann a nod over this team and an upset on the road, and then see what happens. We'll report on that in next week's program.
In Mount Greylock, beginning state tournament play, but they also had a pretty successful tournament run. Although they lost in the semifinal to Greenfield.
Well, the Mounties finished their where they stand right now. They were 14-6. They're 15-6 after their win. They lost in the Western Mass Class C semifinal, Tim, to a very talented Greenfield Green Wave team, 48-45 on the road. They gave it all they had. That's a team that Drury has played and beaten 3 times, but battled Greenfield 3 times. Greenfield did beat Hopkins Academy and lost them by a point. They also battled Pioneer, so they battled the top teams in that league. So Greenfield has a very good program. So they're very deserving of where they've gotten this year. In that game, in that loss, Seamus Barnes led the way with 14, and Chase Doyle had 13. And over the last 4 or 5 games, you've heard us here on this program talk about Seamus Barnes and Chase Doyle being the 2 leading scorers. So one guard and your big guy leading the way. But that game was tied 33 apiece after 3, and it was anybody's ball game. And then Greenfield's Caleb Thomas scored 11 points in the last quarter, including 3 threes. He was big for the Green Wave, and they just got them over the hump. But then they started off their MIA Division 5 schedule, defeating number 43 Broomfield School, 69-55. Again, Barnes and Doyle leading the way, 20 for Barnes, 16 for Chase Doyle. Adam Sandefur, the other mounting double figure with 11. And that game was tied at 30 before Mounties outscored Broomfield 29-25 in the second half. So that was a close one. They've got Salem Academy Charter coming up on Friday, March 3rd. And you never know. I kind of like them in that one too, but we'll see what happens.
Yep. Hoosick Valley, very fine run also here to close out the season. both in Class D and now heading into the state tournament. They got knocked out of the Class D Western Mass tournament, losing to Hopkins Academy 57-51 in a game that they led going into that fourth quarter. So they had a shot in this one.
Yeah, they definitely had a shot, and that's again, it's a team that you and I've covered.
Yep.
They are an excellent ball club, one of the best D5 teams, certainly in the top three, and I believe in Western Mass. And they had a lead and just couldn't hold on. They ended up losing 57-51. It was a big 3-point shot with a 2-point lead by ninth grader Teddy Sear that we saw play up at Drury there a couple weeks ago, and they held on. Joey McGovern led the way for the Hurricanes with 21, and a couple of ninth graders, Cornell Bradley with 8 and Cam Kastner with 7. And the key thing I saw there too was that Frank Field, their leader, is as much of a leader and a scorer as Joey McGovern is. Frank Field is equal as 11th graders, and he was held to 6 points. So if your goal is to slow down one of the two, then they succeed in slowing down Frank that night, and they still were in that game all the way to the very, very end.
Right, and so they now finish up with the state tournament. They tonight will be hosting Granby, a team from Western Mass who they have some familiarity with. So that's their opening round 32 game. That'll be against Granby tonight, and we'll be able to report on that game and perhaps another game next week on High School Basketball Weekly. Drury Blue Devils, Rick, I really consider this one of the finest coaching jobs Coach Reset has done at Drury in his long career there in coaching. This team, they went through that long road trip. They had some difficulties. They lost a few games in a row. But if you ever talk about a team righting the ship, winning some big games to qualify for postseason play, it's the Drury Blue Devils, and congratulations to them. They won the Class C Western Mass Championship.
Yeah, what a difference, Tim, in the last 2 seasons for Coach Reset's Blue Devils. In my opinion, he's not as talented as he was last year.
Right.
He had some hefty goals last year. He said, let's win this new league, and they won it. Hey, let's beat Hoosick Valley on the road, and they pulled it off with a defensive effort. Let's get into the Class C finals, and they did against Paulo Freire. They didn't pull it out, but they made the finals. Let's get a certain seed, which they accomplished, and they made it to the state quarterfinals before losing to the eventual champion Maynard up at Drury. So that team was special, as Coach Reset has had several special teams over the last few years. But this team, knowing you only had one starter coming back, and that was Louis Gelati, your sixth man was coming back, first off the bench, and that's Ahmad David. Other than that, didn't have a backcourt. Had a sophomore center in Sam Mormon that only had JV experience, and it did an incredible coaching job. And down the stretch, they played really, really hard. Battled Hoosick Valley to the very end, and then as Coach Reset was quoted, how do you emotionally play your rival and take them to the very end, and then the next night have to do a makeup game against Hopkins Academy? They battled Hopkins right to the fourth quarter. They did the same exact thing. They played them right to the 3-minute mark until they ran out of gas, but they found a way to knock off Lennox, who had beaten Drury down at Lennox this year. They had split the season series. They win that one, and then they go to Paulo Freire, trying to avenge last year's loss in Springfield on their home floor. They pull that one off, 51-46, and then go to the finals. And in that Paulo Freire game, I'd like to add the 2 top scorers for Drury, no surprise, were Louis Gelati with 28 and Ahmad David with 16. And then they had to play Greenfield. And you have to play a team for three times in the league. You know each other very, very well. You know what adjustments that you're going to make. And Drury turned it on, Tim, in the fourth quarter with Greenfield leading 45-43. They said it was Louis Gelati time, and he put the team on his back. And Drury outscored Paulo 15-0 in the last 4.5 minutes and held them scoreless to win that title. So What they couldn't accomplish last year by winning that class, they did this year. They didn't reach some of the other goals that they might have made.
Right.
But I totally agree with you. Those kids were relentless. And if they were going to celebrate something, it was for a short period of time because they got back to work and Coach Reset, it was defense, defense, defense again.
Yes, and congratulations really to this jury squad. Well-deserved Class C Western Mass title. And they went through a very difficult period. And we send our congratulations to the Player of the Week, Louis Gelati. And what a tremendous season this senior's had, Rick.
Yeah, he scored 500 points last year as a junior. He's getting to those numbers right now in his senior year. And it was incredible. 27 points and 15 boards against Greenfield and 28 points against Paulo. And he just puts the team on his back. And they rely on him. He's unselfish. But when he feels he has to take over a game, he certainly can do it. And he had a great 2 games in that Class C, and very worthy of our Player of the Week. I'd like to add, Tim, also in that championship game, Amont David scored 12 points, and sophomore guard Miles Beauchamp added 11. So when you get 3 kids in doubles like that, it's a good outcome.
And here you have the final rankings of the MIAA Division 5 Boys Division 4s. We've got them up there, and you can see Taconic #1 right at the top of the list, followed by Pioneer, Hopkins, Hoosick Valley, Greenfield. You've got a lot of teams in there from Western Massachusetts. Taconic's going to be a tough out, in my opinion, in this division statewide. Rick, I saw them play the championship in the Class B championship. I saw part of that game against Springfield ICS, and this team is for real. They are going to be a tough out in that tournament.
Yeah, I've talked to some of our local sports experts, Tim, a few media folks, and they expect Taconic to make it to the finals this year. They got beat by Paulo last year in the semifinals at Wacona Regional. They think this team is strong enough this year to get to the finals. I feel the same way, but all the experts felt that this is not Coach Heafy's best team either. It's a total different team than last year.
Right.
But they battled ICS, and they've been won pretty much all year long in the state of Massachusetts. And right under them, they got some really, really good teams.
Right. And look at the E4 boys. Monument and Wacona right there in the Division 4 at 11 and 12. And Monument played in that Class C Western Mass tournament. They lost by 1 point to Springfield ICS. They were right in that game the whole way. So there's a lot of talented teams out there, and it'll be interesting to see how Monument and Wacona fare in the statewide tournament. And there you see the Class D tournament that we talked about, and Hoosick Valley. They got knocked off there at the end in the semifinals by a very good Hopkins team. And then you see the Pioneer and Hopkins, ultimately Pioneer coming out there on top. And there's Drury, their march through the Class C Western Mass tournament. A nice win over Paulo, and then ultimately a championship game. And that reference to the Class B Western Mass tournament, what a great field that was, Rick. From top to bottom, a real solid tournament.
All the way down to at least number 6. Giving all due respect to Belchertown and Mahar, those first 6 teams are absolutely incredible basketball teams. And that Taconic Monument game that you were talking about, Tim, the 1-point loss, 61-60, was back and forth. I talked to someone that covered that game in Pittsfield, and that was a heck of a ball game. But you could flip a coin when you talk about the Wacona boys or the Monument boys in Division 4.
Right.
They're Western Mass foes. They're in the same league. You flip a coin half the time. They usually split the season series, and they did this year. But there's some darn good basketball that have been played, and we've got a lot of basketball left to be played.
A lot to be, and we'll be covering it. And of course, kudos. We want to give kudos here quickly to Pittsfield and Wacona. Wacona girls, they won the Class B Western Mass tournament. They beat Pittsfield in all Berkshire County final. We had all Berkshire County finals in Class B and Class D. We had 5 of the 6 teams playing were from Berkshire County. So once again, showing how strong Berkshire County is. And Rick, if I had anything, I just offer an opinion here. After watching again this tournament, I really mourn the loss of the Western Mass tournament as it used to be constructed. I think they should make more of an emphasis out here in Western Mass on that tournament. I would advocate shrinking Class C and D down to one class, the top 8 teams, and I would also advocate playing these tournaments at one site for the entire tournament, quarterfinals, semifinal, finals, and make it a real tournament atmosphere.
Yeah, and if you can't play at the Curry Hicks Cage, Tim, for whatever, I know the University of Mass doesn't want games played there at this point because of health or safety reasons. But you can always play in Springfield. There's other ways to do it, but we'll go with what they have for now. But we do miss the old Western Mass.
We certainly do. That's going to do it for this week in High School Basketball Weekly. The state tournament is in full swing. All the local teams, the Drury boys and girls, Hoosick Valley boys and girls, Mount Greylock, they're in action. So you want to check them out, check your local listings to see where they're going to be playing and follow them as they advance through the state tournament. For Rick Bull, I'm Tim Morey saying goodbye for High School Basketball Weekly. We'll see you next week. Bye.